All right, yes, deep work session. Very excited for this one, and I felt like doing one. Sometimes it's I don't know, it's very nice to just close off the world and just sort of do a deep work session and be alone with your charts. I really like that. I really enjoyed it as well. So that is exactly what we're going to do right now, whilst I'm still talking, of course. But overall, I have some music on which you can't hear right now, but I have some music on, very light in the background for myself, to sort of, because that's a trigger again. If you're not familiar with a deep work session, I try to get into a flow state, and the way I get into a flow state is currently as well a little bit difficult, because to get into a flow state, or at least how I do it, is you need to be in a safe area. Now, I'm in a pretty safe area, but it's not really familiar to me. So that makes it a little bit more difficult to get into a flow state. So music also helps to trigger the flow state for me. If I hear music that I like, or I just something plays, then for me it's very easy to focus on what I need to do. So that triggers the flow state for me here. And that is exactly what I'm going to do as well. Then the next thing is, you won't hear me talk very much, but you'll hear me say the important things. So what do I mean by that? It's not where I go over forecast and I'm constantly renting your ears off. No, it's more so me again also finding my own understanding, as in finding the own understanding of the theory I'm trying to sort of understand in the market, if that makes sense. So it's also me focusing. I'm also learning something new, which I can then share to you. So that is exactly the plan right here. So let's dive into it. I want to go over GU, and we had the theory right now. To touch on the theory again a little bit here is, let's take that EU example. This was the theory. So on EU, we had this weekly fair value gap right there. And last time I did a deep work session at the end, I got confused. Now I think I'm ready again to sort of conquer the confusing part and to sort of overcome that. So the way I view that is right here. We have this context, the daily context right there. That daily context was finishing whilst we were having already a weekly fair value gap. So why did we not come first into the weekly fair value gap to then already continue higher? And why did we finish this daily context? Well, I think it's because the market is already in motion of finishing that context. So if we know that this weekly fair value gap right there got created after this Friday, so on that Monday right there, on this candle that is sitting right there, then we also know right there, all right, the market was already in motion. So why would it stop right there to then continue lower? It's first going to take this premium array and to use that premium array right there to then continue lower off of that, so to sort of sweep that high to then continue lower towards that weekly fair value gap. That's a theory that we are dealing with right now. This is a great example, and we found some other great examples, but also some examples that were a little bit confusing last time. So here again, I just noticed as well, and we can add that to the list, is that we have a previous week high, of course, that we're also sweeping in the meantime. So that can also something that in that moment that we trade off of that, then we make it a little bit more easier and we make the gap a little bit smaller, as in instead of needing that daily context and needing that exact thing, a previous week low or previous week high in this case, sweep can also be enough. So I have a notion next to me on my laptop that I will also share afterwards. But currently, I'm just going to type in that notion to share my thoughts. The same way we did with the indices filtering process, which eventually didn't lead to much, but well, it did. It wasn't, a deep work session is never futile. It's never for nothing. That's what we need to understand. So, how do we call this theory? Let's figure out a name. We call it returning context. Finish. I don't know. This is not a great name. Finishing context theory. Finishing context theory. Or you could also call it ping pong theory, where we just have the constant flow from premium discount, because the thing here is what we also saw here, right? I think this was one. I'm not too sure actually. Let me see. Where, oh no, this was a different one actually. This is not a great example. This was a different one right there where we already filled context, so that's not really relevant. Now I want to go over a different pair as well, not over EU again. And I want to incorporate more time frames as well. We can, well, let's go over EU again and let's use the daily time frame right now and the 4 hour. So 4 hour context and daily Verwijgaps. gaps. So let's mark out some daily Verwijgaps. gaps. Let's see if we can get something. On the 4 hour, let's see. Moi. Although here we see the same thing again, right? Can you see that? Previous week highs, previous day high, sorry. Let me see. Previous X, low, sweep to then target the FEG and create unusual. And the basic thing that I just want to sort of test right here, because this is great. If we want to use unusual context right now, then this can become very, very important, because if we know and the theory is finished, etc., and we have tested it enough, then this right there, this sweep of that previous day high can already lead to us now having very clear context. Previous day high sweep to target that Verwijgaap right there on the 15-minute, find something to get involved in. Not the prettiest price action, but overall, if we could have gotten involved, then this would have been a nice winner. So it's very interesting, because that makes the unusual context as well a little bit easier to understand, and where the unusual context would actually be high probability, because I deem this as high probability unusual context, where unusual context can also be low probability if you don't use it correctly. That is the way I view it. Let's see, this one did not sweep the high before we came into the daily Verwijgaap gap right there. If we did something on the 4 hour. No, but it was the same. It's again, when the time frame, the two time frames are the same context, then it's not really relevant. Let's see. We had this daily Verwijgaap gap right there, but it's a very small Verwijgaap gap. I'm not going to count it. And let's see for this one. This was also in a monthly Verwijgaap gap, so if we can get something right there with the unusual context to already potentially take a very early short, because let's say we are at that moment in time flow trading. Now, of course, you don't need to do that, but if you are a flow trader and right there you can get that daily Verwijgaap gap, then this candle, or well, after that as well, you can get very clear and you can enter very early. That's what I'm trying to say. You can enter very early right there. It did not have context on the 4 hour, so it's also not a great example, but this is where we have the daily Verwijgaap gap right there. So potentially there's something there where you can just enter extremely early, because then it's the unusual context on the daily, that monthly Verwijgaap gap lower. It's a lot of things going for it. Let's see. I think I wanted to see if they are correlated. The previous X low sweep and the 4 hour context as well. Not really it's the same 4 hour context, so it's not really relevant. It works. Let me think. How many 4 hour candles are in a day? That is 6. How many 7? Does that make a difference? Oh, very, very small difference. If any difference at all. Let me see this one. Because my thought process is here, if we create that daily Verwijgaap higher right there, and we have this potential sweep, which at that moment we don't know, of course, that is going to be a sweep. But if we create a 4 hour context, and that 4 hour context right there with the daily Verwijgaap gap, we have that sweep with the 4 hour context in combination with that, overall being bearish, then we can get involved so early, which could be very beneficial. It's the same 4-hour context. Why? Well, actually, not really. It's not the same 4-hour context. Doesn't really show anything, to be honest. It's not what I'm looking for currently. Not finding the best examples. I'm thinking, is that because of the daily or the weekly? Is that because of the 4-hour and the daily right now? The combination is not that great. Not too sure, not too sure. Well, this is again that same example what we had. That previous day high sweep right there to then come into the daily value gap. Let's see if we actually swept the high first before we came into the daily value gap. Yes. So that right there could allow you to get involved so early on those shorts. It's very interesting. I don't believe I can go into the 15-minute. Oh, I can. Nice. ST, Duri, is NFP. Yeah, that's NFP. Didn't have 4-hour context. The same thing happened here. Right there. Let's see. Same. It's very interesting that the weekly and the daily, they differ much more than the daily and the 4-hour. From what I'm seeing, at least, currently, in these current examples. Let's dive into another pair. Not because I want to cherry pick, but I just want to look at another pair. Let me see. Let's see. This one did not do that context thing to them. But it's very interesting. It's like either targets when it comes, it depends also on how the candle closes, I think, because right there the candle is just primed to trade into the daily value gap already. With same as this, that candle is already primed right there to trade into the daily value gap to then continue higher off of that. Where this candle is as well, but a little bit less so right there. Let's see if the candle close right there really matters as well. I want to switch back to the weekly. Let's switch back to the weekly and see if that really matters, the weekly and the daily, or the daily and the 4-hour right there. I do not think we finished this context. It's the same context, actually. It's purely the way I want to define it. I want to define it a little bit more, is that it's purely when we have that order flow lag. So the order flow lag is the daily order flow lag right there would be like this. And then you create a daily order flow lag higher right there. Then we come back into it before finishing the weekly value gap. Finish that and then target that weekly value gap. That's what I want to see, which currently we are not really seeing right now. Maybe on different time frames, etc. But overall, moi. Daily, let's see. Yeah, so like this, but here we're not getting it clearly. Right there, and something like that. When did we create that weekly verwijger though? That's also quite important to know. It's on, what is it, 29? Yeah, 29. So no, it's not the same. Because here the weekly verwijger was already created when we went lower. So then the low would be different, because then the low would be this low right there. To then target the weekly verwijger. If that makes sense. It's just depending on when or which candle right there creates. Because here we were not already in motion to finish this context right there. Or what I mean is, we were not coming into this to then finish the context right there. Because here, once we were creating this order flow leg lower, or we already had it, then this weekly verwijger was already existing. Where on EU, what we saw, the weekly verwijger was not yet existing. That is quite interesting though. That is quite interesting, because that leads to it understanding it better as well. Really more so the time factor, you could argue. It's the same context. So these examples are not great. As in, this is not a great example. Because this, but, well, you could argue it's a good example, because here it's almost well, yeah, it's, I neglect it, but I don't think I need to neglect it, because I think it's very clear here that once we have these examples, that it is going to trade into the weekly verwijger regardless. So if we have the daily and the weekly right there, then it is almost definitely going to trade into the weekly verwijger right there, instead of respecting the daily. So that is very interesting, because now we have 3 levels to it. As in, the first one was the EU example. Let me see. EU example, where in motion. I'm going to call that in motion. 2, GU example. What was the date on that? I'm not too certain. Let me see, actually. It's the same price action on EU, so I'm going to use that one as well. It is 0 October, 02 October. Let me do 29 actually, because that makes it clear. 29 of September. Weekly fair value gap FG already created. Emotion weekly FG not yet created. And then we had the third one, which was GU as well. And that is where the weekly and daily fair value gap is the same. So no daily context, no daily order flow lag. Let's put it that way. No daily order flow lag, same FVG as on the daily and weekly. So weekly FVG gets traded into regardless. We would of course have to check that as well with weekly fair value gaps that didn't get traded into. But then it really depends again on candle signs. Candle signs is really important as well here, because can you see the difference here between the other examples? Look at this, because right now the candle was a very low close. So here you can, alright, if we want to trade into the weekly fair value gap, what are we going to use to trade into that weekly fair value gap? From the discount rate in the form of that previous week low. Let's see. Which, does it have daily context right there? When was that fair value gap getting created? That is 14, that is 11 of March. Right there. All right. So yeah, it's the same examples that we had on GU example 29th of September right there. Because then this very small fair value gap though, but again, then it uses this already as discount. All right, it's quite it's a quite early discount that we reach for, so we're not really sweeping it. Then the previous week low right there is getting swept to then trade into the weekly fair value gap. It's very interesting. Let's see. And I wanted to choose this one, but that leads me back to as well overall seeing the context. Because if this was the context low at that time, then would you expect a retracement into that candle right there after this candle close? No. It's not very reasonable to then retrace and to then continue lower. Which leads me back to the theory that we had on the fair value theory and the breakaway gap that we also had. This is a great example right here. Let me mark that 28th of breakaway gap example. 28th of February 2022. Yes. It's a great example here because this is again that fair value theory where you have sell side, buy side, sell side. So only this right there is not fair value. And we continue lower off of that. It's very interesting. Interesting. I like that. And it's also not incorporating the monthly right now, which is also quite important, of course. But then why? Then why did we not trade into that weekly VWAP gap that we're seeing right there, right after? Let's see what that looks like. Here the daily context did hold right there. That's quite interesting. That again shows the probability, right? That it's not a 100% thing. It's good to know. Well, of course, that was already pretty obvious, I reckon, but ugly price action here. It's December. That's funny. That's funny. It resembles the current price action as well. Let's see what happened here. Here we have the daily context. Wow, this is the exact same thing that happened on 29th of September this year, 2023, where we have that opposite daily VWAP gap being created right there. And it was also NFP. Was it also? Yeah, 29th of September was also NFP. That's funny. That's funny. It's the exact same kind of price action. Interesting. It's really interesting, actually. And then this was 16th, so it first finishes this context right there. And when was that? Need to make sure of that. Wait. Where are we? I'm lost. There. Let me see. On the 18th of September. Yeah, right there. And if Friday is a down day right there, then it still finishes this context to then target the weekly VWAP gap. It's very interesting because at that moment in time, if this theory again is still in the absolute beginning stages, this theory, so it's good to take a look at, but I would not advise to take it super serious right now. Well, of course, take it serious, but don't look to incorporate it immediately into your trading plan. But right here, this is still very interesting, as in we finished taking that low, and then right there, Friday's down day. So overall, we first finish the context, then target that. So if you know that, then that Monday right there, that Tuesday potentially, you can target that low first, and then you can look to target after that, potentially next week, to target that high right there and the weekly VWAP gap. So that's very interesting. Let's see. Let's see what happened here. Because you would argue, or I would argue at least, that this candle right there is pretty primed. As in, it's pretty primed to trade into the weekly VWAP gap to then continue higher. Which it did not do. So let's see. 4th of August. It's by then, right there. It's also funny that August, but overall I would have expected here, and again, that's the probabilities playing out, of course. I would have expected right there to move into the weekly value gap. If we go off of the theory that we also use overall. Yeah, definitely. Would have expected to move into weekly value gap, which we did not get. Could be a broker thing, but I do not think that is a broker thing. I just think we did not trade into the weekly value gap. This right here, the reason I'm not using some for value gaps is because I'm not cherry picking. Believe me, I'm really not. I'm trying to, at least. If I am, then always feel free to tell me. But this for value gap right there, there's no chance that I would expect after this candle to come back into the weekly value gap. This is just not really what I would expect. What is this? This is COVID, I think, no? Yeah. Ooh. Let's not look at that. Let me see. Right there we have the same previous week low sweep. Let me see some more here, because I also want to look at this weekly value gap right there. So next to value gap as well? Yes, but it's this one as well. I want to look at these three. And let me actually look at 4. This is a nice price action here. When was this? It's quite nice. At least it looks nice. Let me see. On the daily time frame. We had this one right there. It's the same context again. So that reinforces the idea where it's the same context. So it's going to trade into the weekly value gap regardless, because it's same context. Same context is very interesting that it trades into that. And right here, this did not create for value gap higher, so it's actually the same context as well. So it's going to trade into that. It's also super interesting. All right, let me check. It's actually as well the same context. Why is this all the same context? But we also got the previous week low sweep right there. So this is actually 2019 and the summer period and the fall period. This is when this theory really came to life. As in, it's a perfect example of the theory. But let's see. Here the daily context got respected again. Is there a reason for that? I don't want to get too crazy, but can we base that on the fair value theory that we had? Because here you would argue that we have sell side, buy side, sell side. So everything below here is not fair value, meaning that this is the only fair value gap right there that it actually needs to trade into. So it continues lower off of that. Might be me looking too far into it, but it does make sense in my eyes. Let's dive into that a little bit deeper. Wait. This is also very interesting, right? Because sometimes we also see that previous daily low sweep already right there. Then it is, for me, that is like almost a confirmation that we definitely are going to trade into the weekly, into the daily value gap right there. Interesting. Let's see. Let's look at another pair. $10 US dollar. Let's see. Here we actually saw the same this week. Did not pay attention to it, to be honest. Where it is the same context, so it's again definitely going to trade into it. But we did already. Oh wait. Is it the same context? That is 27. That is 4th. That is the first. So right there, we were about to finish the context, then boom, come into it. It's a very interesting price action, actually. When you look at it through these glasses, then this price action makes a lot more sense as well. Where you create this unusual context right there. continue lower off of that, potentially on the 1 hour even. It makes a lot more sense as well, eventually. There's still something there, and that is very interesting. I did actually not pay attention to this week right there, that it happened on Australian dollar, US dollar. Very interesting. I'm going to take a wild guess right there. Is it a wild guess? Probably not, but that we have the same context. Let me see. Yeah, it is the same context. I did not remember the price action. When I zoomed in, I did, but at that moment in time, from the weekly standpoint, I did not remember it. But the reason I said that, I think it's the same context, is because we did not sweep this previous week high right there to then come into it. Which leads me to think the previous X high, previous X low sweep is related to that context. When we have context, it's likely going to sweep that high right there to then come into the weekly value gap. When it doesn't have context, it's just going to target the value gap instantly. Because here you did not have daily context, you did not have daily order flow already. That's very interesting. I need to write that down actually. Scenario 1 and 2 with context is usually a previous X low, previous X high sweep, where scenario 3 is not a sweep, but just straight up a move into the weekly FVG. All right. Did not come into this weekly value gap, although that is, again, that would definitely be, by the looks of this, well, yes and no, because I can also see why I didn't do it, because we have that low very close to it. But it's definitely a move. Well, actually, yeah, 100%. I would expect a move right there first into the weekly value gap to then continue lower, which we did not get. All right. Let's look at this. This fair value gap and this fair value gap as well. That is the, what is that? First? No. 29th of September. And this is 18th of November. And it's the same context. Same context, so we did not get a sweep. Correct. But we did already get the sweep last week, though. Is in the same week that the fair value gap is getting created. Where this area is super interesting. Once we create that low of that potential fair value gap, you have that last bounce right there. And then that last Friday, you can look to target already the potential weekly value gap. That's very interesting price action. It's very, very interesting. See on the 1 hour. Yeah, that's a very nice price action actually. So I continue lower of that. That's very interesting. All right, let's see this one. Same context again. Did we first? I reckon we first took the high or the low. Wait, let me check that to be certain. That is 3rd of October that we opened up. Oh, we first actually took the high. That is so interesting because that reinforces the thing that we had with scenario 3. Where scenario 3 is where we have the weekly value gap, daily value gap. It's the same context. As in, it's just, there's no order flow lag hovering below the weekly fair value gap right there. So it's the same context. And here we again see that we are not sweeping that low first. Although we were closer to it, we first come into that. So we straight away trade into it. And then we target lower. That's so interesting. Same thing we're seeing right there. But this one is a really interesting example. It's very interesting. I like that. What happened here? We did have the context right there. And what happened here? Ooh, this was ugly price action. August as well. Same. What is it? Same context. Same context, no sweep. Same context, no sweep. Same context, no sweep. So let me guess, this is the same context right there. Same context, no sweep. Yes, it is the same context. We gotta sweep the left right there, but that's not really relevant at this moment in time. We got this low taken right there, but when was that Vega being created? Yeah, that again leads to the same factor where we have it's the same context overall, but we did sweep that low right there to then target that because we're finishing that context at this moment. Once that candle opens, we create a weekly value gap, swing low, swept, target weekly value gap. We need to see this over and over and over again to fully be able to understand it as well, and to then potentially look to see. You wouldn't use this as in, it's not that I'm going to use this, I can already tell you that. It's not that I'm going to use this in a context where you would say mechanically. No. This is to build onto the intuition part. That's what the D-Works is also for. It's not necessarily mechanical. It's more so building onto our experience. That's important. I think the low here is that is the low of the Vega gap, 100%, but got close right there. So it did sweep that high right there to then come into it. There's definitely something. I wonder if this is the same context, because why did it not? Look at how low that close is right there. If that is the same context, then that's crazy, because that low is so low right there. That low. Or something happened in the previous week already, but because it's not the same context. It is the same scenario where we finished that right there. It's the scenario 2. The weekly Vega gap is created right there at that moment in time. Once we finish that, then we come into scenario 2. Let's define it by scenario right now. Let's try to more so define it by scenario. So you have scenario 1, 2, and 3. Let's see. Then from there we can potentially work with something. This scenario 3. Right there, scenario 3, because we have the overlapping. They're the same. Context on the daily and the weekly is the same. Now what is that? It's the same as well. Although you could argue this is an extra one because it's not the same. It's not how do you say that? It's not the exact same context. As in, you still have one lag lower. Just doesn't have the Verwijt gap. So this is where we do have this sweep light right there. So this could be scenario 4, or I would argue 3, and then change the previous one to 4. But we'll just leave it in the middle right now and not add on to it just yet. But this is also interesting because it basically does the same exact thing. It's right there, finish that context, yeah. Let's see. Let's see, what does this weekly Verwijt gap tell us? And this one. It's not the same context. Weekly Verwijt gap is created after this candle, so right there. Then it's a previous. Oh, am I saying that correctly? Yeah, that's previous week high sweep to then come into it. That's very clean. That again, that is, what is that? Scenario 1. No. Scenario 2. I'm getting confused about scenarios right now. Weekly Verwijt gap is created right there. Yeah, that is scenario 2. This is where we then come into it, right there. This is scenario 1, where it's not created yet, right there. And we use this right there to then come into it. This is an interesting scenario. We have not seen that before, I believe. It is the same context though, so this is where scenario 3, where we trade into it. This is a very weird scenario, actually. It is the same context, you could argue. We're again sweeping that high right there. So the way I want to see this, again, is, that's also what I'm going to end it with right now, is we're sweeping that high. And we're using that high to then come into the weekly Verwijt gap. So this creates unusual context that we can potentially capitalize on in the future as well. Very interesting. It's definitely something we are going to dive deeper into as well. It's a really interesting theory that we have right here. We have scenario 1, 2, and 3. So we've more so defined it right now, which helps us as well a little bit. Basically same context, but it's again the same thing where we sweep that low, or at least do we? Well, I'm going to count that as a sweep, to be honest. We sweep that low right there, come into the weekly Verwijt gap, and we fail to create a daily Verwijt gap lower, which again adds on to the idea of that being a sweep to then come into the weekly Verwijt gap. It's very interesting, very interesting. This is a great theory, and we're definitely looking to add onto this as well. All right, perfect. Thank you.